Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Arkansas Outdoors Roundup. Today, we're going to be talking about the proposed roadless rule change that the federal government would like to do in conjunction with, of course, the National Forest. And we'll talk about what the roadless rule is, what it does, what it is supposed to do, and the controversy surrounding the rule. Some people are wanting to get rid of it, hence the repeal. It's been around for 25 years, and some people think it's time to change that. Others do not believe that, and they're looking at wanting to keep it in, keep it as is. This story, the roadless rule repeal story, is going to dovetail with something I talked about in the last podcast on some changes that the Forest Service wants to make to how they manage the land. So we're going to look at today the roadless rule and how it pairs with the other rule change that I talked about last time. We'll look at that rule change again, a quick little overview from last time. In the last episode. So let's go ahead and jump into what the roadless rule is. And as usual, I have an annotated article here. And of course, specifically, we're going to be looking at how this affects Arkansas. And let's begin here by looking at a few things. It says here that the proposed policy change would affect how thousands of acres in Arkansas's national forest are managed. And it says in Arkansas, approximately 95,000 acres have historically been identified as inventoried roadless areas covered by the rule. So we have about almost 100,000 acres in Arkansas that is going to be affected by this rule change if they go ahead with it. It says, it continues here, it could change how portions of the Ouachita National Forest and the Ozark St. Francis National Forest are managed in the future. And that's very true. Not all parts of these areas are under the roadless rule change, but many parts are. It says, what is it? What is the roadless rule? It says it limits new road construction, road reconstruction, and timber harvesting in designated inventory roadless areas within the national forest. So that's what it does. It limits any road construction or reconstruction or timber harvesting in these areas. And the timber harvesting is going to be very important because those who favor repealing the roadless rule do so on the grounds of forest fires, wildfires, that sort of thing. And they cite better timber management if the rule is gotten rid of. All right, it continues on here. It says its primary purpose is to keep designated areas largely free of new roads and conventional commercial timber harvesting. And we just mentioned that. Of course, this is a federal rule, and it's something that the Trump administration wants to do away with. And so this is their argument right here. It says it limits the ability of National Forest Service managers to address wildfire, insects, disease, and other forest healths. All right, that's going to be the main justification for getting rid of the rule. All right, it says wildfires, insects, disease, and other forest issues, health issues, can be better addressed by getting rid of this rule. It says repealing the rule would give individual national forest managers greater flexibility to consider roads, timber harvesting, and other management projects. Critics, the people who oppose it, argue that removing the protections could lead to additional roads and logging in some of the country's remaining relatively undeveloped national forest landscapes. That is, to me, a critical point. While repealing this rule would allow access for roads to be built, and you could go in and you could do better timber management, better forest management. But the price you're going to end up paying, or so I believe, is you're going to allow road construction into remote areas that don't see many people. And if you allow that, that could increase harm to these very remote areas. It could change them in ways that cannot be changed back. And that would be a bad thing. All right. So that is a point for me, that once you change an environment, you really can't change it back to what it was beforehand. You can alter it maybe for the better, that sort of thing. But once a landscape, particularly a remote forest area, has been used for timber harvesting and things like that, once those things have occurred, it's next to impossible, if not completely impossible, to restore those areas back to their original state. So it continues on here, says the Ouachita National Forest contains 35,000 acres historically identified as roadless rule areas. Much of Arkansas's remaining roadless rule acreage is in the Ozarks. So you got about 35,000, about, I guess you could say a third of the forest that's in the roadless rule protection area is in the Ouachitas, and the rest are in the Ozarks. It says it would remove the nationwide roadless rule restrictions. Future road construction, timber projects, and other activities would still have to comply with national forest management plans, federal environmental laws, and other applicable protections. Now, that is true. So what they're saying here, even if you get rid of the roadless rule, even if you get rid of that, the forest is still going to be protected by forest management plans. And I'm going to come back to that, because forest management plans are things that are also currently undergoing changes. And I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to review what those changes are. Then we're going to look at how you put those forest management plan changes and how they pair with the roadless rule. You put those things together, what do you get? How is that going to affect the forest area? So let's continue on here. It says Arkansas's roadless rule areas overlap with or near landscapes containing some of the state's best known outdoor recreation destinations. All right, so you have a lot of destinations that people like to go to that are in this roadless rule protection area. All right, and if you get rid of those roads, if you get rid of this roadless rule, you're looking at new development in those areas, which would degrade the overall quality of those areas. It said new roads can fragment wildlife habitat, increase erosion, and change the remote character of backcountry areas. And that, to me, is absolutely a high price to pay just to have roads and development. So what you have, at least from my perspective, is you have this roadless rule being gotten rid of to allow timber harvesting and other sorts of development to occur. And what is going to be the downstream effect of that? Well, it's going to fragment wildlife. How's it going to affect the wildlife? Where is the wildlife going to go? Are their water and food sources affected? Now they have to go somewhere else. Will it increase erosion? Very likely it will. You go in, get rid of trees, you've got an erosion problem typically that follows. And it also, and this is what I mentioned earlier, change the remote character of the backcountry areas. That you cannot fix. Once you have developed an area in whatever way, it's going to stay developed. You can't resort, or you can't go back, I should say, to its original state of being. So Though that to me, those are the arguments against the repeal, and I do think that they should. I think they're stronger arguments than the wildfire argument. In fact, many wildfires, while I would imagine the vast majority are started by lightning strikes, that's a common occurrence or common reason for a wildfire, but usually roads. People go out and they get into areas and fires start because of humans being in the area. And that's something you have to consider. The more people there are in a particular area, the greater the likelihood of a fire starting. People throw out cigarettes, all sorts of things like that can happen. So, as we all know, you increase human, you allow humans into an area. Typically, the effect is going to be negative into forested areas like this. All right. Other points here. It says changes to surrounding national forest management could affect view sheds, wildlife habitat, streams, and other undeveloped character that makes these trails attractive. View sheds, all right? So you're going to go in there and there may be a view along the trail, and you allow for roads to come into an area, you allow development to happen along those roads, and suddenly that view, which used to be maybe even iconic, is suddenly not. You have a clear patch of land, maybe some houses and other things in view, and therefore you have destroyed the character of the view. All right. Again, to me, that is a stronger argument for keeping the roadless rule in effect. And here's a map that shows you some of the shaded areas that are in the roadless rule category right there. It says roadless rule sections are black stripes, so you see them right by the Lake Ouachita. And this is, of course, I believe, pretty much right along the Ozark Highland Trail. Caney Creek is also in the area. Caney Creek is a wildlife management area, and it has much stricter controls over what can happen in there. So it would be interesting to see if this roadless rule does get repealed, how it's going to, how it's going to affect these wildlife areas, wildlife management areas, if, they have other protections. I would imagine they're going to conflict. The roadless rule says one thing or allows for one thing. The wildlife management area rules say something else, and you're going to have this kind of debate, this kind of conflict. What else? It says here the trail passes through some of the most remote terrain in the Ouachita National Forest. I have done the Ouachita Trail, and I love the remoteness of it. You really are out there, and there's not a whole lot of other stuff around you. I really, really like that particular aspect of it. I would hate to go down that trail and then every few miles you see a building here, a building there, a bald patch of hillside or something like that, or roads meandering throughout. So that would really alter the character of the trail, I think, a lot. And here's the Caney Creek Wilderness that I just mentioned. It says repealing the roadless rule would not remove federal wilderness protections, but again, I think you're setting yourself up for a conflict between two sets of rules. One set of rules allows one thing. The wildlife wilderness rules would allow for something else. And how are you going to navigate that? I would imagine, my hunch is that the wilderness protections are probably going to trump the roadless rule advantages. I think that would be the case, but I have no idea that would be the case. It depends on what the forest managers decide they want to do. Let's see, pedestal rocks. It says the potential impact is particularly easy to see at Pedestal Rock. It says Pedestal Rock is also named of an approximate 21, almost 22,000 acres within the Roadless Rule area. So you would have a lot of effect in that area. If you've never been to Pedestal Rock, it's a cool place. It's out on 16 east of Sand Gap, and it would be greatly affected. You would have roads going through many more areas in that particular 22,000 acre area. And again, you see another map here. You see a great deal of the patched black stripes area here within the Ozark National Forest. Let's see what we got. Way up here, Buffalo River, right up there in National Forest, right down there. So yeah, all along the Ozark Highland Trail are a lot of these areas. Okay. The concern is whether future road construction or timber projects in surrounding roadless areas could change the backcountry experience along portions of the route. Well, of course it would. There's no doubt. You build roads and you go into timber harvesting and things like that, you're going to notice it. All right. It's going to definitely affect the character of the landscape. And also the Sylamore Wildlife Management Area, it too is going to be affected by this rule change. It says this region includes hunting areas, hiking, mountain biking trails, Blanchard Springs, North Sylamore Creek area. And so it's going to affect these areas as well. So a lot of these popular places are going to be impacted if this rule change occurs. I don't know, in Arkansas at least, what the big wildfire threat is. I know out west, of course, you've got big wildfires, things like that. But if you look at what causes these wildfires, some of the biggest have been caused by people. The one they had a few years in Los Angeles, that was started by a person, I think around a campsite even. And there have been other people, of course, they've been like arsonists. But, you've got people causing these particular fire problems. In Arkansas, I don't think the wildfire problem is near as great as it is out west. So maybe some aspects of the roadless rule change would be beneficial to people in the West, but I'm not so sure those benefits would translate to a place like Arkansas. I'm a little more skeptical that the big benefits for Arkansans would be there. It says the repeal would not immediately open the 44 million acres. There would have to be some other things done. In fact, I think I'll point this out to you. I think I got a slide on this. The Forest Service is already backlogged with maintenance chores to the tune of about $11 billion. So you have $11 billion worth of maintenance chores, activities, things that need to be done. And that's even before you get to the roadless rule changes. So you put in, this thing gets repealed, you have the roadless rule, gotten rid of. And now people can go in there and start doing stuff. Well, what about the other stuff that needed to be done that's been, sitting on their to-do list for several years? Is that just going to sit there and then you're going to go do these other things because the timber industry wants you to, or other developments that the state prioritizes, commercial developments? It could be, who knows, recreational areas, these sorts of things. What happens to that backlog of things that need to be done and and have needed to be done for quite a long time. It says individual projects still have to comply with applicable forest plans, environmental reviews, and federal laws. Well, environmental reviews, the regulations surrounding environmental reviews have all but disappeared. Look what happened out at Big Bend. They started bulldozing out there. They got rid, started bringing in heavy equipment. They got rid of all the environmental. They waived those. Any environmental impact studies, all of that stuff was just said, was just laid, put aside, and they just started, bulldozing. Luckily, that has ended now, because the public outcry, particularly of the people in Texas, of course, who have an economy built around the national park there. They have direct benefits that they receive from that national park, and to go in there and do what they wanted to do was going to harm them greatly. So, as for Arkansas, the practical impact will depend on what happens after the rule is rescinded. Now, again, you have the timber industry. They're chomping at the bit to get this roadless rule repealed. They want to get in there. They want to start harvesting. Other developers want to go in and buy certain tracts of land and start develop commercially, recreational areas so they can profit off of those as well. My real fear is that the economics of all of this, of this particular change, is always going to be primary over the conservation concerns of the people who are managing the land. Yes, there will still be conservation things going on. I don't doubt that at all. But I think when push comes to shove, I think you're going to see a lot of really good areas, a lot of areas that need protection, these more remote areas. They're going to develop those because the economic incentive to do so is there. Okay, it says recreationists should watch for proposals involving roads, timber harvesting, and other management activities. That's what I'm doing right here. I'm keeping a watch out for these sorts of things. It says the roadless rule has influenced national forest management for 25 years, so it's been around for a long time. It also says here the 95,000 acres of Arkansas's national forest land could lose a layer of protection that has restricted road building and timber harvesting since 2001. So that's what's at stake here. Are we going to allow this to happen? Are we going to go this new route and try to allow these changes to occur? My own personal opinion is the price tag for allowing the roadless rule change to take effect, to get rid of it, the price is too high. It's too great a risk. You have to protect these areas because once they have been developed, once they have been affected by the timber industries and other industries, there's no going back. There is no do-overs as far as all of this goes. So I personally am opposed to it. I just don't trust these government officials to do the right thing by our national forests. I'm sorry, just based on, I hate to say that, based on what I've seen at the Big Bend National Park, they want to put a highway segment in the southern Yellowstone area. They want to develop a highway interstate, I think, through there. Look what happened at Bears Ear Monument. They got rid of all of those, all that acreage, like 90% of it. And now you have mining companies going in there staking claims in these areas. So you already have the commercial stuff coming in. And once those areas are damaged, there is no turning back. There is no do-over at that point. Okay, so let's get back and let's talk about what the roadless rule area conservation brings to the table as far as benefits. You see there in the headline, 24 billion in benefits. This is nationwide, and so that's quite a bit. That's hugely, it's a huge number. All right, and so that is something to consider. Now, there will be economic benefits, but just for those industries that can take advantage of the roadless, of these new roads that they want to build in these areas once the roadless rule change has taken effect. And here's another thing to consider too. These roads that will be built or could be built are going to be paid for by our tax dollars. It's not like the timber industry is going to come in there and build the road. Our tax dollars build the road. The timber industry comes in and uses the road. They harvest the trees, sell the trees, and make money off of that harvest. And we paid for the road that got them in there. So that's the way I understand it. If I am incorrect in that assertion, let me know in the comments. But I think that's how it works. I don't think any timber companies are footing the bill for any of these roads. I don't believe that is the case. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. And you see here, this is looking at Arkansas specifically. And in the state of Arkansas, we're looking at a benefit of 321, almost $322 million. And you look there on the first one, recreation is $183 million dollars in benefit provided by the roadless rural areas. All right. So these areas are protected areas, and they provide a lot of recreation to the visitors and the people who live in Arkansas. Habitat is another 63 million. Aesthetic value, you see there, 23. Disaster risk reduction is 22 million. Water quality, 16 million. All others services you have there, 13 million. So you have a lot of these areas that are benefiting, or we all are benefiting from the roadless rule that is now currently in effect. All right. And it says water quality. We're in the middle of a drought right now. At least some parts of the state are being hit really hard with the drought, but they already have some water conservation orders in effect in parts of northwest Arkansas. In Bentonville, they don't, because we get our water from Beaver Lake, but these other smaller communities don't, and they are under a conservation order right now. So not that that has any direct, of course, any direct connection to the roadless rule, but water quality, I think, in the future is going to become more and more of an issue, and something that is going to be critical. And if we don't protect our water quality, it could come back to bite us on down the road. This is a video. If you go to YouTube and find this video, it will talk about all the benefits of the roadless rule that's been around for the last 25 years. So I recommend, checking out this video if you want to get into the weeds of what the benefits of the roadless rule area are. Let's kind of go back. In my last podcast, my last episode, I talked about forest management changes, and we just discussed the roadless rule and how what changes if they do get rid of it. What would be allowed to happen to those forested areas. All right. Now let's look at the other rule changes for forest managers, and let's talk about that. And then we'll put the new changes for the forest managers and combine it with the roadless rule repeal, and then we'll talk about kind of what that could lead to. So last time I talked about this, it says New policy would give local forest managers more flexibility while reducing public review of internal guidance. The highlight here says, while it does not alter regulations governing hiking, mountain biking, camping, hunting, fishing, or other recreational activities, it could affect how quickly projects move forward and how much flexibility local forest managers have in making decisions. Basically, it's going to speed up the ability of forest managers to do things. All right. The proposal could have long-term implications for trail maintenance, infrastructure improvements, and public involvement. And that last piece is critical because these particular internal guidances are going to not require that public input be needed in many of the things that they want to do. All right. So you've got the way it stands now, when they want to make big changes and do certain things, they're always looking for public comment. These rule changes are going to, for the forest managers, are not going to require public input be a thing. That is, it's not going to require them to seek out public input for whatever management decisions they would like to make. And that to me is a little bit scary. Continuing on, it says the Forest Service Manual contains the agency's official policies and mandatory direction for employees. Under the proposed rule, the manual would continue to serve as the agency's binding policy. However, and here's the but, the handbooks would be reclassified as advisory guidelines rather than mandatory procedures. So they can recommend things, but the forest managers don't have to abide by them. They're no longer mandatory. They're following the handbook is no longer mandatory. It's basically an optional. You can do it, or you don't have to do it. And that's going to give them a lot of flexibility to make certain decisions. And as I noted last time, in the last podcast, a lot of the influences, or I should say pressures, that these forest managers are going to get to do certain things are going to come outside of the National Forest employees or group, and there are going to be pressures from developmental entities, again, timber industries, recreational industries, to make certain changes to benefit economically those organizations and not the public as a whole. So again, that's my concern with these proposed changes for forest managers. According to the Forest Service, the change would allow employees to exercise greater professional judgment and make decisions based on local conditions instead of following detailed national procedures in every circumstance. So flexibility is good, but again, look at what you're giving up. You're exchanging flexibility for less public input. And as we saw with the Big Bend National Park, public pressure is what got that immigration wall construction stopped. Public pressure, public input put the kibosh on them building that wall there. All right. And so we're going to be losing that across the nation in the National Forest Service. All those handbooks, those procedures in there are no longer mandatory. They're just advisory. Do them, don't do them, your call. The agency says the proposal is intended to reduce administrative burdens, encourage innovation, and improve efficiency. Well, we all want efficiency. We all want to, work smarter, not necessarily harder. But again, don't let that public input piece slip away. All right. Don't ignore that. Understand what that really is. They don't want public input on a lot of the forest management decisions they want to make because it may conflict with other interests that outside groups may have, be it businesses, corporations, that sort of thing. All right, now the proposed rule for the forest managers, not the roadless rule, but the handbook rule. It says here the Forest Service Manual would remain mandatory. The Forest Service handbooks would become advisory. All right. Employees could depart from the handbook procedures without documenting extraordinary circumstances. In other words, you don't have to give a reason for not following the procedures in the handbook. Future handbook revisions generally would not require public notice or comment. All right. So they can kind of do what they want to do. Rather than centralizing procedural decisions in Washington, D.C., the proposal would place more discretion in the hands of local forest supervisors and district rangers, which all is, you want them to have a certain amount of control and flexibility to do their jobs. I don't think anyone has a problem with that. But again, what else is being given up here to gain that flexibility? This is the story I mentioned a little while ago about the bulldozing at Big Bend National Park. That construction, as I mentioned, has now been halted, at least temporarily. We'll see what happens later. New mining claims filed at Bears Ear and Grand Staircase Escalante. The mining companies, once they remove the protections for that area, mining companies have now gone in and started looking for places that they want to start mining for precious minerals. This is something that I found that just a comment from a group that was talking about this. The old growth that was standing before this country had a name, the Tongass in Alaska, which is the largest intact temporal rainforest left on Earth. The single greatest carbon sanctuary in our entire national forest system. So the Tongass is up near Alaska. And the reason they're bringing this up in connection with the roadless rule is that the Tongass would now be, now be allowed to make roads in there again for timber harvesting. And they had been doing timber harvesting up there back in the Clinton years. And Clinton put the roadless rule into effect, basically, and Obama did. I'm sorry. Clinton had something to do with it as well. But it protected it for a long time. Then I think one of the Bush administrations came in and changed it and allowed timber harvesting to occur in the Tongass, and it did a lot of damage there. And this is what people don't understand, is that these old forest, these old trees that have been there for hundreds of years, they're massive trees. They're very good lumber to have, high quality lumber, and you can get a good amount of money for it. But what people don't understand is these old forest trees are massive carbon filters. They suck in much more carbon than, your average pine tree or any other sort of tree that you can plant. So you cut down one of these trees, you could then, plant several pine trees or some other sort of tree, and you're going to lose enormous amount of carbon filtering from the atmosphere by doing that. These trees are important in the ecosystem to help filter carbon out of the atmosphere and back into the ground, so it stays there and keeps our CO2 numbers lower. So that is an important thing to remember. Now, of course, we don't have forests necessarily like that in Arkansas. We do have old growth forest, but that's important to remember, that this roadless rule repeal will affect places like the Tongass. So that's what they were bringing out here. It says, who actually wins in this scenario? Well, it says follow the timber. You already own the trees. Taxpayers have sunk more than $5 billion into logging roads since 1975. The Forest Service has a long habitat of handing publicly owned timber to logging companies for next to nothing, while we foot the bill for the access for the roads. So that's another point to consider in all of this. If you want to know more about the Tongass rainforest, there's a really good documentary, again, on YouTube. So check it out. It's called the Understory Tongass Forest documentary. It talks with a couple of people. One of them is a woman whose dad, who lived there, and the timber company came in, and he worked for the timber company, and a lot of the native population there, worked for him because it was the only job in town. But the thing is, the damage that they did was so extensive, and a lot of the people living there were not happy about that, and quit or left. And the timber industry thing was shut down. The timber operation, I should say, was eventually closed down. So if you want to check out that particular story, I recommend going to YouTube and watching this video. Okay, so let's kind of wrap this up and talk about, you got the roadless rule, it's going away. You got changes to the Forest Service manual. A lot of the procedures in there will not become will not remain as mandatory. There's simply things that are optional for forest managers to do. And you put those changes to the Forest Service manual, you combine that with the roadless rule repeal, you get roads and you get forest managers with a lot of flexibility that do not require a lot of public input, if any. And that basically gives them free rein to kind of do in the forest whatever it is they want to do. And that, to me, is troublesome. Again, I just don't trust what the intentions of the National Forest Service, what their intentions are right now. I don't trust them because of what's happening at the federal level. I don't think these people are bad people or evil or anything like that, but I think they are stuck in a situation where, the orders come down and they have to follow orders to do their jobs. And if they don't, then they end up getting fired. It's not fair to them. If you look at the national park employees, last year, they were told to do a whole bunch of things. They had to remove signage and information about conservation and Native Americans in the area. All that sort of history was removed about the harm that settlers may have done to the native populations. Anything that talks about slavery has been removed. And so you have these changes coming from Washington, D.C., and they want to prioritize the economic development, the wealth creation of these corporations and individuals who have a vested interest in these areas. They're not making these changes for the betterment of the public at large. They're not making the changes to improve the quality of the natural spaces that we like to go to. So I hate to be that pessimistic about our federal government, but I think that's just where we are based on the evidence that we've all read about. Look at the EPA. The EPA requirements, protections have been done away with. Environmental studies have been not required anymore, or they've done away with those as well. You have all these changes going in, even our own, our very food system. You have all sorts of E. coli warnings and all these other recalls of food products happening right now. So even our food system is suffering right now. So I think all of that needs to be looked at when you examine things like the roadless rule change and the changes to the Forest Service manuals. You got to ask yourself the simple question: who is benefiting? Is it us? Is it the forest? Or is it corporation and private individuals? You have to look at who benefits from the changes. Of course, we benefit whenever the forest benefits. And I just don't see the benefits there for the forest. I see the forest coming out on the losing end of this, I hate to say. So while there may be some upsides to the roadless rule, I think the downsides far and away outweigh any benefits for insect control or wildfire control. So I just don't think it's a good deal. It's a good deal. All right, so that's all I got for you this episode. I'm glad you hung around. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And I will see you back here again on another episode of the Arkansas Outdoors Roundup. Talk to you later.